The village of Umuokoro used to be a place where silence lived in the trees and the rivers whispered old stories. Life there was simple, sometimes hard, but it carried the kind of peace that made people feel safe under the moonlight. The girls grew up braiding each other's hair under mango trees, learning songs from their grandmothers, and dreaming of good husbands and better futures. But things didn't change. It started with Adiz. She was the daughter of Mama Nkechi, the woman who sold roasted plantain at the junction. Adiz had gone to the city for NYSC, and when she came back, something in her eyes had changed. She no longer tied wrapper to the market like before. She started wearing clothes that clung to her body like they were made for sin. She came home with iPhone, perfume way smell like money, and hair that reached her waist. People asked her questions, but she only smiled and said, "I get one man way day take care of me." At first, they mocked her. Mama Yugo called her a shawo. The old men shook their heads and blamed the devil. But one by one, the girls began to notice how Adiz walked with freedom. She no longer begged her mother for transport fare. She no longer worried about school fees for her younger brother. One week she fixed solar light for their compound. The next week, she bought her mother a freezer. Then it was Ifunanya. Ifunanya, who used to lead choir in St. Teresa's. She came to Adiz one night, crying. Her father was sick, and there was no money for hospital. Adiz held her hand and said, "You fit do wetin I day do." Ifunanya didn't answer, but that same week, a man in a big jeep picked her from the village square. Soon, the whispers turned into silence. The girls stopped judging each other. Chisholm started going to Owerri on weekends. Ebra was always in Enugu, saying she was helping Auntie with her business. By the time Chinaza joined them, it was no longer a surprise. All of them had stories. A mother who needed money. A brother who dropped out. A school that needed paying. Or just that deep hunger for a life that didn't smell like sweat and kerosene. Nobody said it out loud, but the truth hung over Umuokoro like thick harmattan dust. The girls were changing. The men who used to scold them began to call them in secret. Old men with potbellies and young boys with loud cars. Some came from outside the village, driving in like they owned the world. They dropped money like dry leaves and didn't ask questions. Even the pastor's daughter, Amaka, didn't escape it. Her mother fainted when she found condoms in her bag, but by then, the shame was too heavy to carry, and the money too sweet to ignore. Some of the mothers cried in church. Some pretended not to know. Some even encouraged it, whispering, "Just make sure he no use you and throw you away." The girls no longer sat under mango trees to sing. Now they met in small corners, comparing gifts. Bone straight hair. Gold wristwatches. Hotel room pictures. No one talked about husbands anymore. Love became something you watched in films. The village boys grew angry. They said the girls had changed. They said no one respected tradition anymore. But they too, when they had small money, chased the same girls they mocked. The elders called a meeting. They said the village was losing its soul. But the girls didn't attend the meeting. They were too busy chasing the only thing that seemed to listen to them, money. One evening, the sky over Umuokoro turned a deep orange, the kind of sunset that usually brought peace. But peace had long left the village. Mama Ezen stood by her doorway, watching her daughter, Alubub, get into a tinted Lexus with a man she had never seen before. The man didn't greet. He just wound down his glass, looked straight ahead, and waited. Alubub climbed in like she'd done it 100 times. She didn't look back. Mama Ezen sighed and went inside. Her soup pot was boiling, but she had no appetite. "Na hunger day make person throwy shame," she muttered to herself. She remembered when Alubub used to fetch water from the stream barefooted, laughing with her cousins. Now her feet were always in heels. By the time Alubub came back that night, she was smelling like champagne and cigarettes. She dropped N50,000 on the table. "For house things," she said. Then she walked into her room and locked the door. In another compound, Wuja sat under the moon, her knees pulled to her chest. She hadn't joined the others yet. She still tried to resist. But the temptation was heavy. Her mother sold akba by the roadside, sweating every day under the sun. Her younger sister had stopped school because there was no money. And the boys in the village only wanted one thing and offered nothing in return. Uju looked at her phone. Messages from Adiz were piling up. Babe, I get one man for you. Him clean. Him day pay well. Not just dinner. Then another, you won't suffer like this forever. That night, Uju didn't sleep. She kept hearing voices in her head. Her dreams were full of strange hands and hotel rooms. By the end of that month, she joined them. They no longer hid what they were doing. The village market was full of whispers and fake greetings. Girls who used to walk quietly now swung their hips with boldness. They bought things their parents could never afford. The phone screens glowed brighter. The lace they wore to Sunday service shimmered under the sun. The chief's wife called them a disgrace. But her own son had gotten one of them pregnant. Nobody talked about that. Some said a curse had fallen on the village. Others said it was the economy. But those who understood knew the truth, it was hunger. It was dreams that refused to die. It was the sound of money speaking louder than morals. One day, a stranger came to the village. He was young, dressed sharp, and drove a G-Wagon. Nobody knew his real name, but everyone called him Bigman. He started staying in the old house near the river. And every evening, one of the girls would go in, and not come out until morning. People gossiped, but they also noticed the girls who visited Bigman suddenly started dressing even better, building houses for their mothers, buying land. Some of the boys tried to fight it. They formed a group and said they would take back the village. But how do you fight money with empty pockets? One of the boys, Ibuka, loved Chinaza. They had grown up as childhood friends. He even planned to marry her one day. But Chinaza had changed. Her eyes now looked past Ibuka. One night, she told him, love no day feed person. If you no fit buy me ordinary wig, how you want take build family? Ibuka didn't answer. He just walked home, quiet, broken. Still, not every girl in Umuokoro had turned. Some held on, waiting for miracles. But the ones who had changed, they moved fast, moved bold. They called each other boss babe, and toasted to freedom, even though some of them cried when no one was looking. And the story of the village kept changing. Not told by the elders, but written in hotel registers, bank alerts, and silence. Rain fell one afternoon in Umuokoro, not the gentle kind, but the kind that came with thunder and washed through the village like it had come to cleanse. But nothing washed away. The red earth swallowed the water, and the village girls, now used to hotel beds and air-conditioned rooms, stayed indoors, scrolling through Instagram, checking alerts. In Mama Igioma's compound, the air was still. Igioma, who used to be the quietest among them, had just returned from Abuja. She no longer wore slippers, she walked around in fancy slides and silk robes. She had sent her younger brother to a private school in Owerri, and now she was building a bungalow behind her mother's mud house. The neighbors respected her but never said it out loud. In public, they hissed and warned their daughters. In secret, they asked her for small something to hold body. Igioma always gave. She smiled, because now she had what they didn't, power. But not all the stories were sweet. Amarachi was missing. Nobody had seen her in 3 weeks. She had gone to Port Harcourt with a man who wore gold on every finger and called himself Sir Dollar. At first, she posted pictures of herself eating prawns and posing in front of yachts. Then she stopped posting. Her number stopped going. Her mother cried every morning in front of St. Teresa's, holding Amarachi's picture like a prayer. The girls said nothing. Deep inside, they all knew the risk. Some men weren't just men. Some of them came with darkness. But the money, the lifestyle, it made the danger feel distant, like something that happened to other girls. Uchechi was different. She had always been loud, always chasing more. She didn't want just to make it, she wanted to be known. She started going for runs in Lagos, hookups, they called it, but Uchechi said it was networking. She began to post with celebrities, go live on TikTok, give makeup tips, talk about how to keep a man interested. One night, she came back to the village in a convoy. 3 cars, 1 bodyguard, and a chest full of clothes. She rented a hall and threw a party. Music shook the trees. Palm wine flowed like water. All the girls were there, dressed like Lagos babes. Even the village boys, who once mocked them, were now trying to impress them. Dancing, smiling wide, speaking with fake accents. The next morning, pictures from the party spread across Facebook and WhatsApp. The elders were ashamed. The chief called it a disgrace. But they couldn't stop it. The tide had turned. This was the new Umuokoro. The church tried to intervene. Pastor Emmanuel called a special youth vigil. He shouted fire and brimstone, quoted scripture until his voice cracked. But the girls didn't come. And the boys who came because there was free food. But one person was watching everything. Auntie Nena. She wasn't old, but she carried wisdom like her wrapper. She had once left the village in her youth, tried city life, and returned broken and quiet. She had seen this kind of story before. She started gathering the few girls who still held on. Telling them things. Teaching them skills, sewing, makeup, catering. She gave them hope that wasn't wrapped in hotel sheets. Some listened. Most didn't. Because it was hard to say no to quick money. Hard to wait when hunger was knocking. Hard to believe in morals when people around you were buying plots of land from sleeping with strangers. Still, Auntie Nena kept trying. She said the soul of Umuokoro could still be saved. But even she knew, it would take more than one vigil or one sermon. The money had entered their blood. The glitter had soaked into their skin. And every night, the girls continued to leave in silence. Heading toward the sound of car horns, city lights, and promises too sweet to resist. It was in the heart of that rainy season that the cracks began to show. Not in the girls' makeup or their expensive clothes, but deep inside them, in places no one could see. Chiamaka was the first to speak. She sat under the old Udala tree one morning, looking at the mist rising from the hills. She used to laugh the loudest, wear the shortest dresses, always had one sugar daddy or the other flying her to Abuja or Calabar. But now she sat quietly, her eyes dark with things she couldn't explain. Uju found her there, holding a pregnancy test strip in her hand. It was positive. I don't even know who, she whispered. There were 3 of them last week. Uju didn't say a word. She just sat with her, 2 village girls who used to talk about wedding gowns and church blessings, now trapped in silence. Chiamaka didn't cry. She just looked out toward the hills. Is this the life we really wanted? She asked, more to herself than to Uju. But before Uju could answer, they heard a car horn from the road. Another Lexus. Another girl going. Another night traded for crisp Naira notes. That same week, Ijeoma fell sick. Not malaria. Not typhoid. Something deeper. She became pale. Her skin lost its glow. Her mother took her from one hospital to another. The doctors kept asking questions she couldn't answer. And then one night, Ijeoma confessed, she had been sleeping with a foreign client, one who refused protection, who promised her visas and big things. Now, her body was B. Rumors spread quickly. Some said HIV. Others whispered worse. The village didn't say it out loud, but everyone knew, something had gone wrong. Still, not all of them stopped. Adiz, the one who started it all, had grown distant. She no longer mingled with the rest. She now had her own flat in Asaba, drove a Corolla, and only came home to see her mother once in a while. Her smile had become tight, like someone who'd seen too much. One night, she met Chinaza at the village junction. You day all right? Chinaza asked. Adiz shrugged. I day. But this thing no be forever. Make una day careful. Then she entered her car and drove off, her eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses, even though it was almost nightfall. The truth was, many of the girls had begun to feel it, that cold, quiet voice in the back of their minds. The one that asked, what next? What after the money? What after the trips? When beauty fades, when the calls stop coming. Some tried to pivot, started online boutiques, opened salons in town, tried to make something lasting from the fast life. But not everyone had the luck or the savings. Some were already too deep. One girl, Anyunai, went missing for real. Not like a Marachi who disappeared in the city, but right from Umuokoro. Her phone was found on the ground near the old shrine. Blood on the leaves. The police came and left without answers. Her mother wept into the dust until her voice disappeared. After that, a few girls started staying home more. They remembered their real names. Remembered the feel of clay under their feet, the songs their mothers used to sing while pounding yam. But memory is not always strong enough to hold back desire. The money was still calling. So was the hunger. And sometimes the two sounded exactly the same. One day, Auntie Nena gathered the few girls still willing to learn. She gave them mirrors. "Look inside," she said. "Not at your face. Deeper." Some laughed. Others stared. One or two turned away. "Makuna no forget say this village no go always be the same," she told them. "But what you turn into, that one day your hand." Her voice wasn't loud. But it carried. Like the kind of truth that doesn't need echo to be heard. And still, the night crept in as it always did, with the sound of car horns from the distance, another girl, another ride, another story added to the never-ending silence of Omiyokoro. By the time the next dry season rolled in, the red dust had settled over everything, on rooftops, on the market stalls, on the quiet hopes of mothers who used to pray their daughters would become nurses, teachers, wives. But dreams were no longer clean in Omiyokoro. They were wrapped in lace, dipped in perfume, and tucked into hotel sheets. Yet, life continued, as it always does. Ebereki was back in the village after 2 years in Ghana. She returned with silence and scars she never spoke of. Her skin was lighter, her voice softer, but something behind her eyes stayed distant, unreachable. People asked questions, but she only said, "I just want peace now." She moved in with her grandmother and began weaving hair in front of the house. No music, no makeup, no noise. Just braids and a quietness that made people uncomfortable. Some of the girls started disappearing, not in the way Amarachi and Onion Eye did, but slowly, off social media, off the streets, out of the group chats. Chinaza started selling thrift clothes on Instagram. Uju got a POS stand near the filling station. Adiz rarely called anymore, and when she did, her voice was tired. But others doubled down. Uchechi now ran an agency, recruiting new girls from nearby villages. She would ride into Omiyokoro in tinted SUVs, wearing heels too high for village dust, and leave with 2 or 3 young girls who still believed Lagos was heaven. "They're too small," one woman shouted at her one afternoon. Uchechi didn't stop walking. "They want this life," she replied without turning. "Na hunger send them, no be me." The line between choice and desperation had blurred completely. A few brave ones tried to fight it. The youth leader, Chinidu, started organizing boys to protect the village from external influence. He swore to burn down any hotel used for hookups. But the hotels were in town. The men came from outside. The war was bigger than the village. Even Pastor Emmanuel grew quiet. His last sermon was softer, no more fire and brimstone. He looked at the church, half empty, and said, "We must meet them where they are." Even Christ entered homes others were afraid to touch. That day, he went to see Igioma, now thin and worn out, her beauty faded, her house quiet. He prayed with her. She didn't kneel. She just cried. The next week, she joined Auntie Nena's sewing class. No announcement. No pride. And slowly, very slowly, something began to shift. It wasn't big. It wasn't loud. But one by one, some of the girls came back to themselves, not because of shame, but because the road ahead had become too dark. Not because they hated the life, but because they had survived it, and surviving had left them exhausted. They started finding each other. Talking honestly. Crying openly. Laughing carefully, like the sound might crack if it got too loud. They stopped pretending. They began to write down their stories, stories they had once buried deep, now told in journals and voice notes and hushed conversations in front of mirrors. A new kind of strength grew in them. One that didn't come from men's wallets or compliments. But from facing their reflection and saying, "I'm still here. I didn't die in it." Not all of them turned back. Some kept going, deeper into the city, deeper into the game. But those who stayed, they were learning to live again. To cook without shame. To dance without alcohol. To sleep through the night without nightmares. And maybe, just maybe, Mamiokoro had not lost all its daughters. Not yet. We will be stopping here now. We will be dropping the part 2 tomorrow. Kindly subscribe so you will get the notification whenever we drop it. Thanks for watching.